Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the shop here at Eric Schaefer Guitars. I'm going to go through my shop rounds here, which is simply where I just take a moment to go over some of the things that are cool and interesting and new here in the shop, and hopefully teach you guys a little bit of something about lutherie along the way. So first of all, let's take a look at where I'm at right now with guitar number 85 that I'm working on, which has beautiful Zeracoat back, and I have the modified lattice bracing complete here. Just a little bit of touch up on this and that'll be complete. Modified lattice bracing I find to be, at least theoretically, a better bracing pattern than the go-to standard, which is simple ladder bracing. Ladder bracing, which is a bracing pattern where the braces simply run straight across like railroad tracks. Ladder bracing has the advantage simply of being the easiest bracing pattern to execute. So it's very time efficient, it's not very costly for that reason, and also it's easy for the beginner to execute without mistakes. This is a little more involved, of course. The reason people don't go to a further extent than the ladder bracing on the back is honestly for a good reason, which is simply that the back, when compared to the soundboard, the top, simply has less of an influence on the overall tone than the top does. And it's pretty significant how much the top affects the final output of the sound, and it's pretty trivial, arguably, how much the back affects it. So I don't necessarily fault people for defaulting to the ladder bracing, but this is a lutherie channel. I like to have a little fun here. I know that this produces a better result, and I don't mind spending the time to do it, especially because I get to share it with you guys. So I'm producing a video right now, which will be a full build. It's covering this entire full build of number 85, and within that you'll see a lot of the action here as far as how I executed this modified lattice bracing. What else is new here with number 85, new and notable I should say, is this bridge shape right here. Just came up with this design. I really like it for a couple of reasons. One, I think it looks slick. That's always important to me. I want it to look pretty cool. But this also has a lot of functionality to it that other bridge designs don't necessarily have. So let me pull out a typical bridge here so I can make sense of what I'm talking about. So this is a pretty typical Martin style bridge. Very rough right now. Of course it gets thinned out a little bit and fine-tuned to look good and everything. So this is a rough bridge, but still, this is generally the shape. And one thing that you'll notice here is this new design eliminates all of this area here on the wings, which is actually, I believe, very unnecessary. So this swept back look that makes it kind of look like a fighter jet is not just for aesthetics. There's actually a very good reason for that, and that's because the wings come out to meet the X-brace arms, and then anything additional beyond where it meets the X-brace arms isn't really necessary in my opinion. So this squared off look to the wings leaves about half of that wing just as extra unnecessary material that reaches out onto the soundboard and just dampens an area that doesn't need to be dampened. So this shape is very much function over form here. Something else you'll notice that I've done a little bit different here is the hole pattern. Instead of being straight across, I'm doing the arc configuration. I like the arc configuration. The idea behind it is simply that you don't have all your holes being drilled straight in the line, which can and very often does produce problems with either the bridge itself or with the bridge plate underneath. Because when you have all those holes in a line, it's very easy for splits to form right across that axis of weakness that you've created by drilling all those holes basically along the same set of grain lines. On this one here, all the holes are not on the same plane because of that configuration. So that's the idea behind the arc pattern. A lot of people have many different ideas behind why they do their pinholes the way that they do them. There's actually a variety of different theories behind it. But I just wanted to give you, in case you didn't know, what the theory was behind the arc configuration. And here we have the rim set, which is pretty much ready to go here. I've got the side braces installed. I have the kerfing installed. The only thing left to do really is to cut out the corresponding notches for the ends of my bracing here. And likewise, I'll do the same on the top side as well for the top bracing. And one thing you'll notice about the way I do the sides is I prefer to have the side braces run all the way across the width of the side rather than just running between the kerfing, which is fairly common. It's not going to make or break anything either way. I just prefer, for the sake of just durability and longevity of the instrument, to not have basically a weak point where right at that point where the side brace would meet the kerfing. Here we don't have that because the side brace actually extends all the way up through the kerfing. So that's where I'm at with that. I brought the neck out here so you can see that. I'm using Port Orford Cedar. This is sort of in its rough early state right now. I just wanted to show you this because I've used Port Orford Cedar in the past and I'm using it again. The reason I'm using it again is because it's really starting to become my favorite neck wood. It has proven itself to be stiff and stable enough, but on top of that, it is super lightweight compared to pretty much anything else. I still like to use Honduran mahogany most of the time, but sometimes when I want to switch it up and I want to have an instrument that feels especially light in your left hand, I go for the Port Orford Cedar. All right, now the part of our shop rounds here where I talk about just some cool new things that I've got here in the shop that I've had a good experience with. And I've always used these things for a little while before I would actually recommend them to you. So this is called a small stock holder, and it is simply a piece of really safety equipment for using a router table. So, taking small stock, like this piece right here, this is just an offcut from the neck, is obviously very dangerous when you're trying to, say, route against a flush trim router bit to put a pattern on the edge of this piece. With this thing, you can lock this in there and tighten this down. That holds it in place. It also has, I haven't really used these much at all actually, I haven't really needed to, but it has these little hold downs that come down from the top and put a little bit of down pressure against it, which is also helpful. It allows you to put your hands way up here instead of the way I used to do dicey work on a router. One, I most of the time would just find a way to avoid the router. I really don't use the router table for all that much because honestly it's just a cantankerous beast and it's pretty dangerous. This helps a lot, but again, if you can avoid using it altogether by using a spindle sander or something else, that's often preferable. So I just want to make that point. This doesn't make the router safe. It makes it a little bit safer though. Without this, I would end up using other not as great means of holding a small piece like this. This keeps my hands away, but my hands are still low and at the same level of the router bit. When I use this, it puts my hands in a totally different place, which just feels so much better when you're running this against the bit. And the clamp mechanism is less in the way than when I would use this. So really all around, I like it a lot. I also like that these two wings extend out pretty far to give you a nice, stable platform or surface to reference against the router table. So it's really made, for me, using the router table, and specifically pattern routing, it's made it a little bit of a joy again by making it just a little bit less scary. Even with this tool though, by the way, I pretty much only use the router table for, well, aside from routing the truss rod slot, I only use it for creating templates and things like that, which I do out of materials that work very well against a flush trim router bit. Things like MDF or plywood, they don't have the same grain direction issues that normal wood, that solid wood has. But even still, even when I'm using plywoods and MDFs, you want to have something like this to keep your hands up and away from the action. And lastly, I just want to talk about some of the materials that we're going to be using for the 2022 acoustic guitar build workshops. So a lot of you will consider this an upgrade. This is basically come about due to popular demand. I had a lot of people that were just very interested in, not surprisingly, rosewood back and sides. So we'll be using East Indian rosewood back and sides. I have purchased a whole bunch of sets of these for 2022. Some East Indian rosewood, some Nicaraguan rosewood, which to most of you is just an unnecessary detail, but it's interesting to me. They're both comparable. I could show you a piece of Nicaraguan, which I will. Let me go show you that. So just so you can see sort of the color difference here. Now we'll just ignore the sapwood stripe here, which is just cool. It's a cool bit of character on this particular piece, but they don't all have that. This is a little more beige-ish, orange-ish almost, brown, whereas this is a darker purple. Tonally, they're, I would say, the same. But there you have it, East Indian and Nicaraguan. And then for the tops, for the longest time, I was doing all mahogany on the soundboard, so mahogany back and sides and a mahogany top. But now we're doing softwood on the top, Sitka spruce in some cases, sometimes German spruce. Again, both very comparable. Either way, spruce. So this right here is a piece of Sitka. And you can see very tight grain lines. This is a nice piece. Still doing Honduran mahogany, which is really the gold standard for guitar necks. And I don't have a piece out here, but we're using either Gaboon ebony or Macassar ebony for the fretboard, bridge, the bindings, the end wedge, the head plate, and all those little decorative appointments like the heel cap. Just wanted to show you guys the cool materials upgrade that we're doing here. I've been doing these mahogany guitars for years now. It's going to be a lot of fun to really get a feel for the difference between these instruments by simply swapping out the mahogany for these two woods and keeping everything else the same. By the way, speaking of the 2022 workshops, the spring workshops, there's literally one spot left for all 4 of the spring classes, and then the fall workshops, there's still plenty of space. So spring is almost completely booked. If you want to get in on that, I would jump on it right now. Fall, you've got a little more time.
If you learned something here, please give this video a like and subscribe so you can be notified when I release a new DIY guitar making video. And if you want to really learn more, take one of my structured online courses at ericschaeferguitars.com or register for a hands-on guitar building workshop here with me in Burnville, Pennsylvania.